On to our Bookstr segment. Sarah Hill's not with us today, but we have a guest that I'm sort of excited about. Someone who I know, someone from not from North Carolina, but you kind of adopted home state.
Oh yeah, with Clay, I spent about 10 years in the 82nd Airborne at Fort Bragg, and then of course I was Wake County Superintendent for a couple of years. I was Secretary of Transportation for about 3 years, and I remember last seeing you. You were on the campaign trail, and you came to a town hall meeting that I was holding, and I was proud of you for being there. And your big bus was out there. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Tony Tata, General. I would say Secretary Tata, but should I call you? I mean, you've had a lot of titles. General Tata.
Because we should explain what's the Secretary.
Let's do the introduction.
All his titles.
How about I do that? Former Brigadier General of the U.S. Army for 30+ years, almost 40 years. Former superintendent of the school system that I did my entire school career in, and former Secretary of Transportation for North Carolina. Tony Tata is with us.
And also a national best-selling author, hence the Bookstr connection. So
we're going to sit here and just chill and talk about stuff. So we need to do the introduction.
Basically a Renaissance man, where if there's something to do, he's done it. So his current book is national bestseller, Beseiged, which is spy thriller talking about terrorism. Well, tell us about that first.
Yeah, so I started writing a long time ago when I was a little kid. I just loved to write. And I started getting these book contracts about 7-8 years ago. I've got 7 novels out now, and I'm with Kensington Books and St. Martin's Press. And this is a Kensington book thriller, Jake Mehegan. He's a Native American from the Outer Banks of North Carolina, Frisco, and he's a waterman, 6.5 foot tall, and he's former Delta Force. And you can read these books in any order. I kind of shrink wrap them so that there's no carryover from one to the other. And the log line of this book is Mehegan has to rescue an 11-year-old autistic savant girl code writer that has been captured by Iranian special forces in southeastern North Carolina, who want her to write this code to make autonomous vehicles communicate and converge on certain places, because they've created autonomous vehicles that have bombs in them,
First of all, do we have Iranian special forces in southeastern North Carolina?
For sure. And there were many of your constituents.
No, I'm worried about that. I don't know about that. A lot of people, a lot of folks leave the public service, which you have been in every echelon of, and move into I kind of did the backwards way. I did the entertainment world first and then did the political thing. But a lot of people tend to move from the political world into entertainment / fiction / and then oftentimes use what they learned in their former career to guide their ability to tell stories like this. Are there things that you find in your books were not just guided by your military experience, but by what you learned through the political process?
Absolutely, Clay. And I've spent a lifetime of trying to figure out what is the worst thing that could happen to my troops in combat, whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan or Kosovo or whatever. And you can be standing as a commander and know that you've got 3, 10, 25,000 of America's finest under your charge, and you're responsible for them. And so my mind was continuously cycling, what's the worst thing that can happen? What do I need? What am I doing that I shouldn't be? And what am I not doing that I should be? Kind of thing. And so when I was secretary for this book, I went out and visited Tesla and to see their technology, talk about autonomous cars and all that. And I'm standing in the factory, and the way my mind works is I'm thinking, wow, what if bad guys were actually making these autonomous cars and putting 155 artillery shells in the back of them? And
that's how your brain works.
Yeah, that's how my brain works. So, yeah. And so, and I said, that's a great plot for a book. And then suddenly, I write Besieged, and it becomes, flies off the shelf. So,
well, you got to stay ahead of the curve. That's what we want in our military forces. So the fact that you can bring that military knowledge to do something that is, true to life.
That's a great point, Carrie. I wrote a book called Rogue Threat in my previous series, and it was all about a Chinese merchant ship that had a shell of containers, not actual containers, and inside that shell was an aircraft carrier of unmanned aerial vehicles that had bombs on them. And today, the #1 problem in Iraq, ISIS has figured out how to use UAVs and put bombs on them and send them into our base camps. And so that's a number one issue that we're struggling with today. And to me, it was just a sort of a fantasy of this is something the enemy could do 10 years ago when I wrote that book. And now today, it's a tactic that the enemy's using.
No, I mean, we see this all the time in sci-fi where people are, envisioning things that could happen in the future, and lo and behold, it happened. So I think, military fiction is no different. Pamela Wiley Ackerman says on Facebook, "I am so jealous of anyone that loves to write."
Sort of feel the same way. Do you enjoy the
Yeah.
I spoke with an interviewer, a Washington Post reporter who I talked to during my campaign, who said a line that I love. He said, "I don't like writing, but I love having written." Do you like the process? Or
I
do you
love
like
the
product?
process. So when I'm in the process and I'm in that flow and I have I turn off internet, I turn off my phone, and I am just writing. I have no distraction. I feel like I'm an actor in my own story, and I'm in there. And you write from 2, 3, 4 points of view in a book, at least I do. And so I had to learn about an 11-year-old autistic savant girl. I read 4 books. I watched countless YouTube videos. And so the research is as much fun as it is for me to create. And I feel like I'm shaping and creating as I'm writing. And to me, that's the fun part. The editing, not so much fun. But yeah, I'm kind of like,
When someone's telling you what to change.
where were you when the page was blank is kind of what I'm
Do you always have one book in the process, or do you have 17 ideas in your head and you're trying to do more than one?
I'm putting out 2 books a year now, and
That's amazing.
Wow.
It's like it takes me. I do 1,000 words a day is my goal,
Really?
and sometimes I'll do 2, sometimes I'll do 500 words, and but my goal is to average about 1,000 words a day. So in 3-4 months, you've got a rough draft. Send that into the editor, then you start the next one, and you have this sort of overlapping process. I can't work on 2 books at one time, but in the creative mode. But once I get something pretty nailed down, then I can move to the next idea. And fortunately or unfortunately, there's an endless stream of ideas out there, just given the nature of the technology changing and global geopolitics and all of that kind of thing. So it's fun.
Let me ask a stupid question. What's more enjoyable? Writing fiction or dealing with the political process?
Well, I'll tell you, Clay, the most satisfying job I've had in my career. I mean, I love serving soldiers and leading. Being superintendent of your former school district, Wake County Public Schools, I felt in my heart that I was that was my calling, and I was serving 150,000 students, 300,000 parents, 18,000 employees. And
Largest school district in North Carolina.
15th in the country, 18,000 employees and 170 schools. And I got into every school in my first year as superintendent. And I went into elementary school, 104 elementary schools. I went into just about every classroom and shook their hand. Both my parents were public school teachers. You can see I'm passionate about this. And I shook their hand and I said, "Thanks for what you do." And if it was just a 30-second interaction, I had teachers walking out crying, saying, "I've never met a I've never had a superintendent come to my classroom." And I'm like, "You deserve to be thanked for what you do."
How do you get kids to read more? They're constantly on their phone. I mean, I'm on my phones all the time. I mean, what's the prospect of reading for a generation that doesn't know how to hold a book?
But yeah, especially a book versus
Yeah.
just like a 2-second meme.
Well, hardcovers are coming back, and then the Wimpy Kid thing, and the Dork Diaries, and all of that. And I think creating content is the best thing you can do to get people to read. And so being able to penetrate that market and create the content for younger children, because I'll tell you, I was one of those nerds that would come home from elementary school with an armful of books from book fair day, and I would just lock myself in my room and read and get lost in the fictional world, and it was so much fun. And those children still are out there, and that's what they want. And just don't give them the phone until they become a teenager or something.
Very well.
Yeah.
No, you got lots of a very interesting story, lots of different facets to your career. Any nonfiction prospects for you?
Yeah, I've been asked to do some nonfiction stuff, and right now I've got a good problem. I've got so much fiction work lined up for the next couple of years that I don't know that I'd be able to squeeze a nonfiction thing in there unless I cloned myself. Or
38 years in the Army.
Which could happen.
38, right? 38 years?
Well, 28 years.
28 years in the
28
Army.
years.
Right. 28, sorry.
Yeah.
28 years in the Army, superintendent of schools, secretary of transportation for a state. You got to be a long book, right?
Yeah, well, and chief operating officer with Michelle Rhee of Washington, D.C. Public Schools, right at the eye of the hurricane of education reform. Michelle's an awesome leader and friend, and we just, being in that really gave me that hard break from military into education, because that was the eye of the hurricane of education reform right there. And then Wake County reached out to me, and I came in there, and that was a community that needed healing, and I felt like I walked right down the middle very well on that. And then the governor asked me to be Secretary of Transportation, and so I've enjoyed all of my public service. Now I'm enjoying being a private businessman, creating jobs, having a business, and writing books. So.
Well, and I want to ask about that transition for you from the military, which I'm not in the military, my brother's in the military, but the perception of the military is it's very command and control, it's very cookie cutter, you just take orders, it's very hierarchical by nature, that's the way it's set up. And now you're doing something that's incredibly creative and just free-flowing, you're sole entrepreneur in that way. How did you go from that kind of very structured environment to doing something so creative? And did some of your former colleagues think, like, what the hell is this guy doing? He's kind of crazy.
He was in charge.
Well, yeah, no, I bet.
Well, but that's a great question, Carrie, because the perception of the military is this hierarchy. But in reality, in Afghanistan, I had 91 forward operating bases, and I couldn't be at all 91 at any given time. And so you have to respect and trust your subordinates. And these were captains and sergeants that were in charge out there on the Pakistan border or the Iranian border or wherever. And you give them guidance and let them execute, and you have a very flat organization. You've got a little headquarters thing up in Bagram was where our headquarters was, and you have daily reports and all that. But the operations, they're being run independently and separately. And so you've got to be creative in the military, or you're not going to, because the military is all about solving problems.
Well, I'm going to resist the urge to start asking you about hierarchy and the president and how he does his.
Well,
we won't do that for you.
I think we should have a question here. We got a question.
Yeah. Hey, I'm fine with it. It's going to be a tough political one. Get ready.
I think you can handle it. From Sydney Piper, it says, what does he think of Betsy DeVos?
Well, the understanding growth and performance as the two key academic metrics are key to anybody in the education world. I think that her support of parental choice is a very strong characteristic that she has. And even talking with Michelle, who interviewed with President-elect Trump at the time, you never want to take choice away. And so having a choice advocate, I think, is probably a good thing, because public schools, and I know that when Wake County, Clay, we had gotten to a point where we thought we were the only game in town, and then charters were coming up, privates were coming up, stealing market share. And I got asked a question at a town hall meeting, what do you think of charters? And I said, I love charter schools, but my job as superintendent of the public school system is put every charter school out of business, because there's no better option for parents than our public schools. And so
I like that.
We're
going to move to this, because we've got to wrap up. I'm getting Mayor Sue Ruderskold says, Anthony Tata, I like you. Please write a book about the importance of a good, solid public education. So that answer that he just gave, I think I agree with you on that.
I think that was a good answer, because you want the public schools to perform.
Yeah.
And so if it's lighting a fire under you, then by all means.
That's right. And with two public school teacher parents, that would probably be the best book for me to write.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you go. We'll look
Great.
for it. It's important to note, I know him as Tony Tata. You know him as Anthony Tata. It's AJ Tata on his book. So when you go look for his book, you can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Bookstr.
They're in bookstores everywhere. Yes.
Tony Tata, AJ Tata, Anthony Tata,
General
whatever you call
Tata.
him. General Tata.
That's a lot better than a lot of things I've been called. So.
Go find his new book, Beseiged, and his entire series, which he's got some national bestsellers in. So thank you very much for joining, Secretary.
Thank you, Clay.
And thank you guys very much for joining us. Tuesday morning, 9 a.m., Bold
Business.
And we're back here on Friday, right after the testimony of James Comey.
Comey.
It'll be a good one. You won't want to miss that. Friday morning at 10. Thanks so much, guys. See you next week.